I want you to imagine, if it's all right with you guys, imagine a newborn babe, okay? The doctor's there counting out the toes. Yeah, it's 10 of those. Then they count out the fingers. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the room goes very, very quiet. The little baby, which is very cute, by the way, is then handed to the new mum. And the doctors say, I'm really sorry, but your daughter's been born without any fingers on her left hand. As you can see, my existence has been apologised for since my very first few moments in this world. So it's not really a huge surprise that up until about 7 years ago, I was embarrassed of, and if I'm being brutally honest, ashamed of what I've always called my little hand. So what happened 7 years ago? Must have been a yoga retreat. Very zen, all about self-esteem, or maybe a very well-worded self-help book. No, no, it was not. It was actually quite a well-known baking competition. There's one very disgruntled, blue-eyed judge, and the other one's a bit like your naughty nana, wears some questionable jewellery. Yes, the Great British Bake Off. It's changed my life in so many ways. I'm not a teacher anymore. I work in TV. I know the difference between a Jacquard and a Genoese sponge. Ish. And somewhere along the way, I went from really hating how my hand made me so different. I hated the word disability. I had an adverse, visceral reaction to that word. I didn't like it at all. And now I am a proud, disabled woman, and I will shout from the rooftops about how much I love and I feel lucky to be part of such an exceptional and extraordinary group of human beings living with disability. Now, you might think it's a bit unusual that being catapulted into the limelight and having experiences like being directly tweeted by trolls, asking me where I put my hand in relation to my husband's anatomy. Yes, that really happened, might result in such a seismic shift in self-acceptance. But when I start to break it down, it really does make sense. Okay, we're going to go back in time now, all right? We're going to go back to when VHS was king, the height, the sophistication that was. Also, Google wasn't even a word, it was just a noise that a toddler might make when they were excited. The 80s. There was little to no positive representation of disability on TV. Social media did not exist. Okay? So there were no body positive influencers to show us that human beings come in all different shapes and sizes. There was no way to search online and find someone who was in the same position as you. The word disability, it evoked pity, shame, prejudice, vulnerability. And there was little to no support for mums of children born with a disability. We didn't even have a Disability Discrimination Act in the UK until 1995. Everything that surrounded the term disability and everyone it represented was shrouded in stigma and negativity. My mum, of course, wanted to protect me from all that. She didn't want me to have to shoulder the responsibility of being a person living with a disability, and she would reject anybody who labelled me that way. I want to tell you a little story about my nana. Has anyone ever encountered an 80-year-old woman, probably a nana, who just loves to come at you, drop a truth bomb in a really casual manner, massive, by the way, and then just walk away, leaving the debris behind them? This is what happened about 10 years ago. My nana, my lovely Nana Pat, rest in peace, one of life's great human beings. We were just having a nice chat, and she was like, you know, your parents were very depressed when you were born. Cool, thanks, Lan. Just to clarify, though, they weren't depressed that I was there. They were just really worried about how I would go about, how I would grow up in a world that would see me as weird, as abnormal, as other, and as less than. They had worries like, would I get a job? Would anybody love me? Would I be able to, whip up a vegan meringue made out of chickpea juice? Okay, maybe not that last one, but you get the idea, right? For years, we didn't even know there were other people out there with a condition like mine. We just didn't know. When I was a teenager, I'd walk into a club or a party and I'd get my friends to hold my little hand because I'd want to hide it. I didn't want anybody to notice, because there'd be multiple occasions where I'd be chatting to a guy, like you did back in the day in the club, maybe even having a cheeky snog. We'd be vibing. And then as soon as they noticed my little hand, and I mean as soon as, they would bolt, okay? They couldn't even contemplate being attracted to someone who had a hand like mine, who had a disability. So as you can imagine, that really kind of, it eats away at your soul. It really kind of digs away at your self-esteem. I couldn't accept my disability, my hand, because I was shown little to no acceptance on a daily basis. So why did the bake-off help me? Well, I came face to screen with my little hand under the watchful eye of the general public. I couldn't hide anymore. It's not like I could ask my friend to come into the tent with me and just hold my hand the whole time walking around. It might have been a little bit of a hindrance. I couldn't hide anymore. There I was. And I was the first visibly disabled baker as well on Bake Off. So the media had a field day, as did social media. At one point, there was a story trending with the headline, "I'm sure she had a hand last week," on the BBC. I was trending above Trump, just saying. It was a really big deal. I think what happened was I was forced to talk about it. I was forced to recognize it as a disability. And then came the messages from parents of children who had a hand like mine, or from people who had a limb difference like me. And that's really where things started to change. I had a message from a mum of a 4-year-old saying that she was so worried about her child, same worries as my mum and my dad, but that they turned on the telly, and because they'd seen someone who looked like their kid, they knew that they were going to be okay. There's a psychotherapist called Nathaniel Brandon, and he said that the first step towards change is awareness, and that the second step is acceptance. Now, I would like to think that we as a society are now much more aware of all the beautiful differences and disabilities that make up the human race, much more aware than we were, say, 40 years ago. Are we accepting of those disabilities and those differences? I think if we're being quite honest with ourselves, no, we're not. The world isn't designed for those living with disabilities, and I want you to interpret that in every which way you can with that sentence. The thing that people don't think about sometimes, though, is that disability, being disabled, is the only minority group that anyone can join at any time. And everybody will join if they're lucky enough to reach a certain age. Accessibility benefits everybody. That is a whole other talk. But what I'm saying to you today is the very least we can do is work on the acceptance. I want to tell you a story of something that happened to me at school drop-off a couple of years ago. I've got a daughter. She was about 8 at the time, and she wanted me to arrange a play date with her friend that she'd met in school. And I kept messaging the mum, and she kept putting me off. And I thought, okay, what's going on? Lots of excuses. And then I was leaving school one day after a couple of months, and she came and grabbed me after school. And she said, I just wanted to explain why I've not said yes to the play date. I said, okay. She said, my daughter's really scared of your hand. I was like, I did that classic British thing where I was so surprised that I went into really polite mode. So I was like, oh, maybe my daughter could come to your house, or maybe I could come into the school and do a chat about disability. And then I was like, hang on a minute. I got home and I was really upset. I was really, really, really upset. And then, do you know what? I was really mad. I was really cross. I thought, hang on a minute, you put the blame on my disability when actually it was her who hadn't taught her daughter understanding and acceptance. That wasn't on me. We as human beings give so much weight to how the world sees us, even more so in the constant digital environment in which we find ourselves. Imagine if a person who sees me on the telly, or who lands on my social media page, or who sees me doing my weekly shop in Tesco. Sorry, I work for the BBC, other supermarkets are available. And they just think, she's got no fingers on her left hand. And then they move on with their life without nurturing any feelings of distaste or pity. Then the positive impact that has on me seeing myself as someone who deserves to be accepted is immeasurable. Now apply that to the millions of people who live with disabilities every day. Acceptance breeds acceptance. Me being on the Bake Off led to me accepting myself. People turning on the telly and seeing people with disabilities lead to them accepting that as being part of the norm, part of every day, which then, when they encounter people who live with disabilities, they treat them with acceptance. I want to reiterate that disability isn't some far-off, obscure concept that only affects a couple of people. You should want to nurture that acceptance and cultivate the change that could have a positive impact on innumerable lives, one of which could be yours in the future. It's not like I'm asking you to make a chandelier entirely of biscuits in 4 hours, is it? Thank you very much.